When I went for a sleepover at my best friend's place, I never imagined her mom would surprise me like that. But that day, when as she drew nearer, I felt an irresistible pull, a longing that made me wish for time to stand still. What was meant to be just a fleeting weekend began to transform into something far more profound. Perhaps we could enjoy some movies and pizza reminiscing about a few old high school tales with Eli just like we used to. It had been ages since I last laid eyes on him. College had swept us both into its whirlwind of responsibilities. So when his message popped up on my screen, it felt like a blast from the past. "Mom's whipping up that pasta you love for the sleepover." I agreed without a second thought. Arriving at his house was like entering a scene from another era, the well-worn brick porch and the wild greenery surrounding it evoking memories long past. Hydrangeas lined the path, their fragrance weaving through the air, a blend of summer and memories. I rapped gently once, but the door swung wide before I could even retract my hand, still knocking like an unexpected visitor. Eli flashed a grin and drew me inside. With a playful grin, I shot back, "A hug, some of us have manners." He chuckled, his expression unchanged, mirroring my amusement. Though a bit older and perhaps a touch scruffier, that familiar warm goofball energy was still very much alive. We fell back into our usual rhythm. The rhythm of the day quickened as hours slipped away, lost in the world of video games and half-watched shows, all while trying to catch up on the latest happenings. Once upon a time, there was a tale of love and change. It all began with a girl who was dating someone, but then that someone decided to leave, moving away and leaving a void. Just when it seemed like the story was taking a turn for the worse, she walked in. Vanessa, a breath of fresh air that changed everything. It had been almost a year since I last laid eyes on her. She always possessed a stunning beauty, that kind of effortless allure that comes with maturity. Her honey brown hair flowed gracefully, captivating all who beheld it. Her hair was elegantly gathered with gentle waves flowing gracefully around her shoulders, and she adorned herself in this, an off-shoulder sweater that effortlessly blended a laid-back vibe. With an air of thoughtful elegance filled the room effortlessly, a gentle presence that wrapped around everyone. "Maya," she said, her smile radiating warmth. I had been wondering when our paths would cross once more. Rising to meet her, I embraced her, gently enveloped in warmth and a delicate fragrance. Whispers of a scent that dances between the elegance of flowers and the warmth of maturity, striking a balance that feels neither entirely nurturing nor wholly inviting. "You've grown up," she murmured as we pulled apart, her eyes lingering. "Just a moment longer than I expected." "You look lovely," she said, her words wrapping around me like a warm embrace. It was the way she spoke, with a gentle smile that lit up the room, expressed it in a way that felt genuine, not like the overly sweet tone a friend's mom might use. It was more tender and subtle, whispered softly like a secret that danced just beneath the surface. I blinked, a silent acknowledgement of gratitude. "You." She looked stunning as ever, her smile growing just a bit more radiant. "That's really sweet of you," she said. As the evening unfolded, the meal was nothing short of exquisite. Vanessa had a way of preparing food that felt like she was vying for the spotlight in a glossy magazine, captivating everyone around the table, including Eli. As I indulged in the carefree feasting reminiscent of those youthful days, she glided through the kitchen, her movements a dance of familiarity and grace. There were moments when I would notice her stealing glances in my direction, leaving me to wonder if it was all just a figment of my imagination. The gentle touch of her fingers against mine, as she handed over the parmesan, the way her laughter lingered, more deliberate and reflective, whenever I shared my thoughts. Perhaps I was lost in my thoughts, or maybe not. Later, as the clock struck midnight, Eli succumbed to slumber on the as. I settled into the couch, caught in the midst of a moment I found myself not quite ready for sleep. Instead, I curled up in the corner, seeking comfort in the familiar embrace of the cushions. Wrapped in a cozy throw, I scrolled through my phone, the soft glow illuminating my surroundings. The TV murmured softly, playing a familiar late-night rerun, creating a comforting backdrop to my evening. And then I felt the gentle sound of footsteps trailing behind me. "Can't sleep either," came her voice, soft and familiar. As I glanced up there, she was Vanessa, framed in the doorway of the living room, gracefully holding 2 glasses of rich red wine. She was draped in a long, flowing silk robe that whispered elegance. With a gentle tie at her waist, A whisper of lace peeked out at her collarbone, causing my heart to leap. With a gentle smile, she approached, saying, "I thought you might enjoy something to help you relax." Over and handing me a glass, I said, "Oh, thank you." I took it, making an effort not to stare at her. She gracefully settled into the armchair opposite me, crossing one leg over the other, with an air of quiet elegance, the robe gently slipping away. Offered a glimpse of her thigh that felt a bit too daring, yet she appeared oblivious to it. Or perhaps she was aware and chose to share that moment with me. After taking a sip, they asked, "How's school treating you?" I replied, feeling a bit flustered. She shared her thoughts, focusing on my life. Curiosity sparkled in her eyes as she inquired about my classes and my living situation, wanting to know more about my journey. As I found myself in her presence, I aimed to maintain a carefree demeanor, yet the intensity of her gaze, those eyes that seemed to capture my very soul, made it nearly impossible to keep my thoughts from wandering. "You've always had a wisdom beyond your years," she remarked, her wine swirling gently in the glass, a thoughtful look in her eyes. "There's a serene quality about you that brings me peace." My heart raced with excitement. "You stand apart from the rest of Eli's friends." A nervous chuckle escaped my lips, and I decided to take that as a compliment. "You should she said, tilting her head slightly. "You wear it well." There was a moment of stillness, thick yet comfortable, as she met my eyes. The quiet lingered, brimming with an unexpressed connection. In a moment charged with anticipation, she moved deliberately down the hallway, each step echoing with a warmth that crackled in the air around her. As she passed by, her hand reached out, gently grazing my shoulder. Her fingers lingered for a moment, just a heartbeat too long. Long before I slipped away, I felt a chill as my skin tingled with the touch. I knew I should move on. As we prepared for sleep, her voice took on a gentle tone, whispering that it was late. I nodded, feeling an unexpected dryness in my mouth. As she made her way down the hallway, the gentle whisper of silk accompanied her steps. As she faded into the distance, I lingered for a moment, wine glass cradled in my hand, taking in the atmosphere of the room. Spinning ever so slightly, I couldn't tell if it was the alcohol or her touch that had me in a whirl. My thoughts raced, leaving me to wonder if this was all just a figment of my imagination. It felt innocent, as if I had misunderstood something that never existed. When I finally rose to make my way to the guest room, the hallway stretched before me. The room was cloaked in darkness, save for a narrow beam of warm amber light spilling from the slightly ajar door, where her voice floated softly as I walked by. As I lay there, the world around me faded into a gentle hush. Just then, a soft voice broke the silence, urging me to rest. "Well, my dear," I shifted a little, and there she was, framed in the doorway. A vision of warmth and comfort. With one hand resting on the frame, her robe cinched, yet gently parting at the neckline, she moved in closer. Just enough to draw attention. Her fingers danced along the small of my back. A barely there, feather-light caress that lingered just a moment too long. As she smiled a slow and secretive grin, she vanished behind her door, leaving me standing there, stood there in the shadowy corridor, frozen in place, my heart racing wildly within my chest, as uncertainty lingered in the air. A hesitant dance between wakefulness and slumber. Little did I know this was just the dawn of a wild adventure, heralded by the first rays of the morning sun. Soft light filtered through the curtains, casting long, lazy shadows across the living room. I lay there for a moment, soaking in the tranquility of the scene. Gazing up at the ceiling, my heart continues to flutter from the events of last night with Vanessa. The way her voice caressed my ears, and the way she looked at me, it was far from the innocent warmth one might expect. Mother, it was an experience unlike any other, something beyond my understanding. I convinced myself it held no significance. She was likely just... In a moment of warmth and kindness, there was a simple exchange, a gesture of friendliness. Yet when she uttered the word sleep, it carried a weight that lingered in the air, hinting at something deeper beneath the surface. Tight, sweetheart. The way her fingers brushed against my back ignited a warmth within me. As the spine tingled, a sense of change hung in the air, and Eli's booming voice shattered the silence. As he stumbled into the living room, still half asleep, I couldn't help but smile. "Morning, Maya," he mumbled, his voice thick with slumber. "Is everything all right?" he inquired, running his fingers through his tousled hair. "Yeah," I replied hastily, propping myself up. It seems you're feeling a bit uneasy, perhaps because you're not quite familiar with my ways." The couch felt as hard as a rock, and I let out a half-hearted laugh, though the sound barely reached my ears. I found myself lost in the echoes of Vanessa's touch, a lingering sensation that refused to fade away. The gentle touch against my skin made me ponder whether she was aware of the closeness we had reached, or if it had all unfolded by chance. I set those thoughts aside and trailed after Eli into the kitchen, where Vanessa was already bustling about. In the kitchen, a serene atmosphere enveloped me, reminiscent of the past. She hummed a gentle tune while preparing coffee, her voice breaking the morning silence. "Morning, Maya. Did you sleep well?" she asked. Inquired, her tone easygoing, yet carrying a gentle warmth that was impossible to overlook. Yeah," I mumbled, attempting to maintain my composure, but my thoughts kept circling back to what had just happened. Last night replayed in my mind the sensation of her touch haunting me, refusing to fade away. I attempted to concentrate on the eggs sizzling in the pan, yet each time our eyes met, an unspoken connection lingered in the air, hinting at something deeper between us. There was a silence hanging in the air, a tension that lingered as I focused on the simple task of spreading butter on a slice of toast. Avoiding her gaze yet as I extended my hand for the jam, my eyes caught hers. In the quiet of the kitchen, a glimmer caught my attention. For just a heartbeat, her gaze met mine through the window's reflection, a brief yet powerful connection that lingered in the air. Her lips were slightly parted as though she had been anticipating my arrival, but in an instant she turned away, leaving me in a moment of uncertainty. She turned away, feigning nonchalance, but I could feel the heat of her gaze lingering on me. My heart raced, caught in the moment of uncertainty. What was happening? Was it all in my head? Or was there something tangible here? Just as I tried to piece it together, Eli's voice broke through the haze. "Hey, I need to dash out and grab Jake from soccer practice. You both will be okay here, right?" Vanessa smiled at him, her fingers gently weaving through her hair. "Of course, go ahead," she said, inviting him in with a warm glance. "We'll be fine," Eli said as he grabbed his keys and stepped out the door, leaving Vanessa and me behind. In the solitude of the kitchen, the silence enveloped me, heavy and suffocating, as if it had taken on a life of its own. It was just the two of us now, and my mind was consumed by the memory of the way Vanessa had gazed at me, the way my skin tingled as his fingers lightly grazed it, igniting an inexplicable bond between us. I found myself turning to him, searching for answers I couldn't quite articulate. As I turned my gaze, I discovered her eyes fixed on me, unwavering and full of anticipation, no longer masked by the pretense of distraction. As if she were anticipating a moment, I felt the heaviness of her gaze. "Would you care to join me in some stretching?" Vanessa broke the silence, her voice soft and inviting. "I was thinking engaging in some yoga could be just what you need to ease that tension you've been holding on to." The notion seemed pure, yet there was an undertone in her voice that caused me to pause. What was it about her request that made me question her intentions? As she extended the invitation, I couldn't help but wonder if it was merely a casual gesture, or if there was a deeper meaning behind it. I nodded in response, curiosity swirling within me. Despite the turmoil in my stomach, I nodded with a smile, ready to join you. She guided me into the living room, where she gracefully unrolled a mat before the expansive bay window, the gentle morning light spilling in around us. As the soft glow of dawn poured in, it danced around her silhouette, and I watched in silence as she gracefully began to stretch. In that fleeting moment, I found myself captivated by her presence. She glided through each movement with a fluid elegance, every stretch intentional and poised. With a deliberate grace, she moved her body, a testament to strength and poise. There was an undeniable confidence in her every gesture, a sense of mastery that captivated me as I watched entranced. As I tried to concentrate on the yoga poses, I found myself captivated by the fluidity of Vanessa's movements, each one pulling me deeper into the moment. Her movements were fluid and graceful, drawing me in as she led me through each pose, her presence almost magnetic. Her hands moved softly, guiding my posture as her fingers grazed my back. "Breathe deeply," Vanessa instructed, her voice calm and soothing. Her voice was a soft whisper, a gentle murmur that wrapped around me like a warm embrace as she placed her hands on my hips, guiding me into a deeper stretch. The warmth of her touch lingered, creating a connection that felt both intimate and soothing. Fingers brushed softly, lingering in a delicate dance that stretched time itself. I sought refuge in the rhythm of my breath, yet the air felt heavy, elusive, and full of unspoken words. Between us lingered a weight and unspoken tension that transcended the practice. As I leaned into the stretch, her hands met me with a gentle pressure. Against my hips, her fingers curled gently as she guided me into the pose. I could feel the warmth of her body so near to mine, the distance between us dwindling with each breath. "Relax," she whispered softly, her breath brushing against my ear. "You're holding on to something." The closeness of her voice made my breath catch. My heart raced as she leaned in behind me, her body grazing against mine, sending a shiver down my spine. The delicate touch of her skin brushed against the sheer fabric of her robe, sending my heart into a wild rhythm, while a gentle tremor coursed through my body. As the air thickened with unspoken tension, Vanessa whispered softly, her hands gliding down with a gentle touch. To my lower back, her hands massaging gently as she led me deeper into the stretch. Her touch was steady, confident, and reassuring. My body reacted instinctively, a nod escaping my lips, as a wave of dizziness washed over me. My heart raced, echoing in my ears, and I found myself unable to halt the momentum. I held my breath as her hands glided down, pressing into the muscles that had been so tense all along. As the morning light filtered through, a wave of warmth enveloped me, creating a sense of closeness that was almost palpable. With each exhale, I felt a moment of hesitation, my breath momentarily trapped in the depths of my throat. And then, almost unintentionally, a gentle sound escaped my lips. It was so soft, It was a fleeting moment, yet it resonated throughout the space. Vanessa's hands paused on my body, a smirk playing on her lips filled with a knowing glance. A smile danced at the corners of her lips as her fingers gently tightened around my waist just a little. "You really should let someone take care of you," she whispered, her voice thick with significance. I found myself frozen in the air in the room, heavy and electric. Words eluded me, and I found myself at a loss. All I could feel was the rapid thumping of my heart and the heat radiating from my skin, an overwhelming rush of emotions swirling within me. The tempest arrived unexpectedly, a force that neither of us could resist, drawing us closer in its chaotic embrace. The sky shimmered with clarity, radiating the warmth of a sunlit summer afternoon, and the next heavy clouds gathered, casting a shadow over the world, their dark and foreboding presence looming as I sat quietly on the porch. As I flicked through my phone, searching for a distraction, the electric tension in my body refused to fade away. After yoga, I had nearly persuaded myself that it was merely a fleeting oddity. In that fleeting instant, as the thunder rolled ominously through the heavens, a surge of anxiety coursed through me once more. As I stood there, an unsettling sensation washed over me, hinting that a shift was imminent. "Looks like we're in for a downpour," Vanessa remarked, her voice cutting through the tension. Spoke from the threshold, her tone steady, yet an unfamiliar quality lingered in the air. As the evening wrapped us in its gentle embrace, I felt a pull to retreat indoors. I rose to my feet, and the atmosphere around us seemed to thrum with a quiet warmth. As we made our way back to the living room, the air around us felt denser, and soon the first raindrops began to dance against the windows. As the skies darkened, the rain began to fall, transforming into a relentless torrent. The wind surged, howling fiercely against the walls of the house, and in an instant the lights flickered before plunging everything into darkness. In the hush of the moment, silence enveloped everything. Then, like a whisper in the dark, the gentle click of candles being lit shattered the stillness. Their flickering flames danced, casting shadows that told stories of their own, casting long, trembling shadows on the walls. Vanessa's voice softened as she reached for a bottle. "Well," she said, a hint of warmth in her tone, "of wine from the cabinet." "I think we'll need this to ride out the storm," she said, pouring 2 glasses and handing me one. She took it almost instinctively, not even pausing to inquire about her evening plans. My mind was a whirlwind, unable to settle on anything at all. The atmosphere surrounding us was heavy with unexpressed feelings, an invisible force tugging at my heart, while Vanessa appeared oblivious, or perhaps she simply chose to ignore it. She remained silent, taking a slow sip of her wine. Her eyes locked onto mine through the flickering candlelight, a gaze that spoke volumes. It felt so intense, as if she were peering into my soul, searching for something vital, something she absolutely needed to uncover, you know? She spoke after a lengthy silence, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "I've always envied the simplicity of youth," she confessed, and I turned to look at her. In her state of confusion, unsure of the path ahead, she nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting a mix of uncertainty and curiosity, never leaving mine. "You're so free, Maya, so unburdened by everything else. It's a relief to let go of the burden that time brings." I tilted my head, allowing the gravity of her words to sink in. Enveloping me like a warm embrace, I questioned, "What do you mean I don't feel like I'm that free?" Softly uncertain about the reasons behind my words, I confessed, "I'm figuring everything out. It's not easy." Vanessa smiled, yet it was With a bittersweet smile, she spoke, her voice now softer. "That's not the kind of freedom I meant," she said. "I was referring to the way you live. The path before you is filled with endless possibilities, a concept that feels almost beyond my understanding now." Her voice carried a weight, yet she appeared. Her sadness felt like a veil shrouding her in thoughts that seemed far away, just beyond my grasp. As I stood there, her gaze held onto me, stretching the moment into something deeper, something unspoken than usual. Her eyes locked onto mine, as if she were on a quest for something elusive, something I wasn't certain I was prepared to reveal. As I stood there, I felt a lump in my throat, caught off guard by the weight of the moment. The atmosphere around us grew heavy, charged with unspoken words and lingering tension. Once more, the weight pressed down, more intense than ever, as if the tempest raging outside paled in comparison to the turmoil that had ignited within. In that moment, without uttering a single word, Vanessa moved closer to me. Before I could even process what was happening, she softly grasped my hand in hers. Her touch sparked a surge of energy coursing through me and quickening my heartbeat. With a firm grip, she guided me forward, pulling me into the moment. Across the room, the music played softly, an ambient melody, weaving through the air, filling the silence that lingered between us. Vanessa reached for me, her touch gentle and inviting. As we swayed gently, her hands rested softly on my waist, while mine found their place on her shoulders. The rhythm of our movements was fluid and serene. Her body moved effortlessly close to mine, a sensation that was both entirely natural and yet completely foreign. I could feel the warmth enveloped me. The gentle press of her body against mine sent my heart racing, thudding in my chest. Too loud, too fast, every inch of me alive with the moment. In that fleeting moment, my skin tingled with an acute awareness of the distance that separated us. It felt like a sanctuary, as if nothing could disrupt the peace, as if we were simply existing together in harmony. In the shadows, two figures swayed, lost in a melody that existed only for them. As the rhythm transformed, so did the air around them, thickening with an unspoken connection that crackled like electricity. Began to create once more, her presence strong and unmistakable. Her hands gently descended a little on my back, a tender almost. With an almost unseen caress, she glided alongside me, each movement measured and intentional, her gaze unwavering. As I stepped away, a flutter of anticipation coursed through me, each subtle shift in my body, making my breath catch in my throat. As the tension hung in the air, Vanessa's lips parted slightly, her eyes drifting down to my mouth, a moment suspended in time. In the briefest of moments, her gaze flickered back to mine, revealing a hunger that I couldn't quite comprehend. There was an inexplicable tug in my heart, a sensation that danced between excitement and fear. She leaned in closer, her breath warm against my ear, her lips almost grazing my skin. "Maya," she whispered softly. I don't know what you're doing." I stood still, my heart racing so fiercely, it felt like it could explode. The words lingered in the atmosphere, heavy and charged, the air thick with unspoken words. Yet just as I was about to reply, she gently distanced herself. Her hands lingered gently on my hips. But there was a pause in her touch, as if she were contemplating a retreat. She fought against the urge to cross the line. The space between us felt unbearable. My hands shook as I drew her closer, my hands resting on her shoulders as I pulled her back into my embrace. In that moment, I felt a wild abandon, a sense of being adrift. In that fleeting instant, I breathed out softly, "Then show me," my voice trembling with disbelief. As the words escaped my lips, I noticed the shift in Vanessa's gaze. Her eyes deepened with shadows, and her breath became unsteady as she turned to me. With her lips just a breath away from mine, she tilted her head, lost in a moment of contemplation. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, fingers curling ever so slightly at my waist, but just as I thought she might. "Kiss me," I whispered, and in that moment her expression transformed. She hesitated, pulling back slowly, as if the very air between us was heavy with unspoken words. Reluctantly, her voice broke the silence, a soft tremor lacing her tone. It was a soft murmur, a delicate touch as she cradled my face, her thumb gliding tenderly across my lower lip. "Not here," she whispered, her voice a soft quivering echo. "Not like this." I parted my lips, ready to voice my thoughts, but she was already retreating, her figure slipping back into the dim corners of the room. The soft flicker of candlelight cast gentle shadows across her face, her eyes a mystery in the dim glow. "I think it's better if we don't cross that line," she whispered, her voice fading into the air, a distant echo of a boundary unbroken. Yet, I stood there breathless, my heart racing as the shadows enveloped me. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windows, yet it paled in comparison to the tempest raging within me. The house stood in eerie silence, broken only by. As the storm faded into the distance, a gentle rhythm filled the air. The rain whispering softly against the windows, creating a serene atmosphere. As the night enveloped everything in its stillness, I found myself lying in bed, a restless soul, searching for solace that remained just out of reach. The sheets enveloped me heavy, with the weight of my thoughts. Every inch of my being crackling with the vividness of the memory. Vanessa's touch lingered, her whisper, resonating within me, a relentless rhythm I couldn't ignore. In the depths of the night, I found myself restless, caught in a struggle against the fierce tempest that howled around me. Within me, a storm brewed, relentless and consuming. My thoughts spiraled around her, the memory of her hands grazing my skin, lingering like a whisper in the night, igniting a fire that refused to be extinguished. Breath caught in her throat as she pulled away, and even now, as I lay there, I felt her absence There was a physical ache, a lingering presence that felt as if she was always by my side, even in her absence. I sat. In the stillness of the night, as the silence wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, I found clarity in my thoughts. I knew without a doubt that I could not remain here any longer. In the stillness of solitude, my mind wrestled with the shadows that haunted me. I felt an undeniable urge to rise and confront the unknown. As I stepped out of my room, the house enveloped me in darkness, a stillness hanging in the air. Shadows danced and elongated along the hallway, guiding my way as I approached Vanessa's door. As I stood before the door, a wave of uncertainty washed over me. My heart raced, each thump resonating like a drum echoing in my ears. The door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling out from within. I took a slow, shaky breath and pushed it open. Inside, Vanessa nestled in her bed, the gentle light from a bedside lamp enveloping her in a warm, golden embrace. She adorned herself in a luxurious silk nightgown. The gown wrapped around her figure, accentuating her curves in a way that left me momentarily breathless. Her hair cascaded freely around her shoulders as her eyes rose from the pages of the book she held locking onto mine with a calm familiarity. Her eyes held a deep understanding, a silent acknowledgement of my presence. She knew the reason for my arrival, and she understood that I simply couldn't resist the pull to return. The instant our gazes met, all else faded away, the universe beyond us. The tempest raged outside, but within the walls everything else blurred away. It was just her and There was a palpable tension between us, a weight that had been accumulating over days, weeks, perhaps even longer. She remained silent, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity that was almost palpable. There was a stillness in the air, a sense of anticipation that made my heart race. Slowly, I felt my feet begin to shift, compelled by her unwavering gaze. As I moved closer, I found myself by her bedside, enveloped in the delicate aroma of her perfume that lingered in the air, gentle and alluring, blending seamlessly with the heat of her touch. Her gaze was deep and mysterious now, laden with an unnameable weight. "Vanessa." My voice barely escaped as a whisper drifting into the air. In a moment where uttering her name felt forbidden, she chose silence. Instead, she extended her hand, inviting connection without a word. Her fingers brushed against my arm, igniting a flame that danced across my skin. With a gentle pull, she drew me nearer. And before I could even process what was happening, her lips found mine, the kiss beginning with a gentle, lingering touch. Soft and unhurried, as if savoring every moment, her hands glided to my face, exploring and feeling me in a way that was both tender and intimate, cradling it gently as if it were something delicate and cherished. But then the kiss intensified, transforming from a tender moment into something more passionate. Her lips, soft and inviting, were now filled with a hunger that pulled me closer, a need that echoed my own. My hands discovered her form, following the gentle curve of her waist, sensing the warmth radiating from her skin. As I gazed at her through the delicate fabric, an irresistible urge surged within me. I found myself captivated, not wanting to pull away. Her breath was a soft whisper in the air, enchanting and mesmerizing. Warm against my lips, her body pressed close to mine, and for a moment, everything else faded away, leaving just us in our own world. The distance that once separated us vanished, leaving only the two of us woven together in the fervor of the gentle brush of intimacy, as my fingers glided over her skin, savoring the silkiness of the moment, the gentle contours of her form that appeared to beckon to me, as if they were destined to align with my own. Yet even in that intense moment, an invisible force restrained us, a silence that lingered heavy and undeniable. It wasn't merely the warmth of our bodies pressed together. It was the unspoken understanding that we were stepping into uncharted territory, a realm from which there would be no return. It transcended mere longing. It was an experience rooted in something profound, something raw and exposed, meant for a fleeting moment, I imagined we could halt, drift apart, and act as if nothing had ever transpired. As the moment shifted, Vanessa pulled away, her forehead gently resting against mine. Her breath came in quick gasps, and I could sense the tremor in her hands as they clung to me. "If we begin this," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Her voice was low, almost hesitant. "It can't be a game. I don't play with hearts." I closed my eyes. My eyes lingered as her words enveloped me, a heavy shroud that pressed down on my heart. The ache within me grew, a palpable uncertainty swirling in the air. That reflected her essence, yet I found myself unable to halt, not at this moment. I opened my eyes and gazed. With her, my heart raced in my chest. "Then don't stop," I whispered in return. Her voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried a weight of longing as she pressed her lips against mine once more. This time there was no restraint. The kiss was filled with an urgency that spoke of unspoken desires. It was a moment charged with urgency, as if we were both racing to grasp something we had long been avoiding. Her hands glided over my body, a silent acknowledgement of the tension that hung between us. There was a gentle intertwining of emotions, a blend of softness and longing, and I mirrored that connection, my fingers weaving through. Her hair tugged gently, drawing me nearer, the warmth of her skin melding with mine. Her heart raced, a wild drumbeat echoing in her chest, perfectly in sync with my own. We flowed together, our bodies entwined, intertwining as if destiny had crafted us to align flawlessly, yet it transcended mere physicality. It was about there was an unspoken connection, a profound understanding that transcended words, as our bodies communicated in a language all their own. We craved proximity, a connection that transcended mere touch, yet even in that moment of unfiltered emotion, in the delicate dance we shared, we both held back just enough to keep the spark alive, a gentle reminder that this was far from casual, far from just a fleeting moment. It was a delicate dance we had both been navigating, a topic we could feel lingering in the air, unspoken, yet palpable. Once it was done, there was no turning back. The kiss lingered, gradually softening, and Vanessa gently pulled away. Her eyes wandered, seeking mine, while her chest rose and fell with each unsteady breath. Maya, her voice thick and heavy, filled the air around us. With a heart full of feeling, I realized this was more than mere physicality. I nodded, the words escaped me. Searching for the right words to express my feelings, I leaned in, pressing my lips to hers one final time, a vow that we weren't merely crossing a line. We were stepping into a realm from which there was no return. The next morning, I awoke. In the quiet of Vanessa's bed, I found myself enveloped by the tangled sheets, each twist and turn a reminder of her presence. The warmth of her touch still danced upon my skin, a fleeting echo of moments shared. The warmth enveloped me, a gentle throb that matched the rhythm of my heart. I lingered in that moment, caught between uncertainty and the swirl of emotions, unsure of my next move. My body still buzzed with the echo of her presence, and I found myself gently tracing the spot on my lips where hers had lingered. As I made my way downstairs, I discovered Vanessa, already awake, gliding silently through the kitchen. The rich aroma of coffee enveloped the air, drawing me in. The house was filled with an unspoken tension. She stood with her back to me, not even glancing my way as I entered. Set the cups down on the counter as she passed me the coffee, her hands trembling slightly, just enough for me to notice. She felt the weight of the moment, yet her gaze remained averted. This was far from the end. The story was still unfolding, and I could sense it in the air. Uncertainty hung in the air as the house resonated with Eli's voice, each word echoing off the walls, blissfully unaware of the unfolding mystery. The air was thick with anticipation as he returned, his spirit bright and lively. He animatedly recounted the thrilling soccer game he had just experienced, each detail bursting with enthusiasm. Friends he'd encountered and the treats he'd indulged in, yet I found it impossible to concentrate on any of it. His words faded into mere background noise, the background flickering in and out, reminiscent of a static radio signal, and all I could hear was the relentless thrum of my heart echoed in my ears, a constant reminder as I revisited the moments of awe. Last night, memories of Vanessa danced through my thoughts, her gentle touch, the sweetness of her kiss, the depth of her eyes. Everything about her lingered in my mind, echoed in my mind, and despite my efforts to cast it away, I found myself unable to resist the allure, the surge of. With each breath I attempted to take, a torrent of emotions surged within me, desire, fear, and confusion intertwining, overwhelming my senses. In the quiet of the kitchen, Vanessa glided with an air of practiced grace, her eyes seldom meeting mine. Each action was deliberate as she arranged the table, her movements a dance of precision and care. Yet in the way she carried herself, I sensed a storm brewing within her, mirroring the chaos I felt inside. Her back turned away from me for the most part, yet occasionally her eyes would dart in my direction, just for a fleeting moment. In that fleeting instant, an invisible thread seemed to bind us, as if she were silently gauging the space that lay between us. The intensity of her gaze pressed down on me, heavy and profound. In moments when the weight of her silence filled the air, it resonated more profoundly than any spoken words ever could. As Eli continued to chat away, he remained blissfully unaware of the tempest that had just raged between Vanessa and me. Yet I sensed an unease in the air, heavy and electric with unspoken words. His laughter echoed, but it felt out of place. I chuckled softly, a faint smile crossing my lips, hardly taking in the words as I moved on. I reached for my bag, resting on the couch, and that's when I stumbled upon it, a small note hidden within the folds of my jacket, my hand brushing against its surface. My hands trembled as I pried it open, and a gasp escaped my lips when I laid eyes on the phrase, "If you ever desire more than just, one night you'll know just where to seek me." The ink still glistening, the words weighed down with meaning. In that moment, my heart raced as if it had suddenly awakened from a long slumber, releasing a flood of emotions that had been hidden deep within. With a surge of turmoil bubbling up, I swiftly folded the note and tucked it away in my bag, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. The burden felt nearly unbearable, compelling me to leave. I couldn't remain in this place, not with Eli so near and Vanessa so far away. Moments passed, and soon we found ourselves in the car, making our way back home. Eli sat in the front, lost in the rhythm, humming to the tunes that filled the air. As the gentle melodies floated through the air, I gazed out the window, my heart a cacophony of emotions, while my thoughts danced in a loop, revisiting every moment that had unfolded. Vanessa's words lingered in my mind, a haunting refrain, "If you ever want more than just one night." But could I, should I? The city pulsed around me, alive with possibilities. The world around me faded into a haze. Yet my mind was fixated on one undeniable truth. I couldn't walk away without carrying a piece of her with me. In a moment of uncertainty, I found myself standing at the threshold contemplating the door that she had left ajar. What unfolds next? Where do we journey from this point if we chose to continue? As we tread this winding path, the weight of the world looms large. How could we ever confront it? They would never grasp the depths of our journey, and honestly, I find myself lost in that very thought. We hold the answers. Yet one truth remains: the past is unchangeable. What would we do now? What you do in our space? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, for this is just the beginning of our journey together.